Life Audio.
Hey listeners, Ashley here to let you know that Ted and I are taking a little break from recording new episodes for the show. But we'll be back in August with brand new episodes that we can't wait to share with you. In the meantime, enjoy a few of our favorites from the last few years.
Life Audio.
Welcome to the Team Us podcast, where we share how grace, commitment, and cooperation can help couples live the everyday moments of marriage together.
Hi everyone, we're Ted and Ashley Slater. No matter how long you've been married, reminding yourself of fundamental marriage truths is helpful. In this episode, we'll share 4 truths about marriage every couple needs to remember. So Ted.
Yes.
Today we're talking about 4 truths about marriage that every couple needs to remember.
Okay.
And this topic was sparked by an article I wrote a few years ago for engaged couples for boundless.org.
Uh-huh.
And the idea for the article stemmed from looking back at our premarital mentoring and asking myself, what do I wish our premarital mentors would have talked more to us about or done more of with us? And then when I wrote the article, I asked friends the same question.
Uh-huh.
And you'll get to hear some of those answers in this podcast too, because I'll quote some of them.
All right.
So thinking back, what do you wish maybe they talked more about or done more of or not done?
Okay, I'm going to confess. It was more than 5 years ago. It was like over 20 years ago. I do not remember much of our premarital counseling other than the sex talk.
Yeah.
And then only that we had one. So.
Right. Okay.
But I don't remember much.
Yeah.
We're fans of premarital mentoring, but I just.
Yeah. And I think what sets premarital mentoring apart from premarital counseling.
Did I say premarital counseling?
No, you said mentoring.
Okay.
But I'm just thinking in case people are listening and going, well, what's the difference?
Got it.
Is that for us, it was a couple from the church who had been married probably at least a decade,
right,
who came in and sat with us and went through different topics. And we actually found ourselves doing this with couples at our church in Georgia. Well, when I look back, I wish that the relationship would have continued after the mentoring ended.
Okay.
I think that,
so that like when we're married, after we got married, the first few weeks, first months, you could call them and.
Right. We could call them if, because we had felt like we'd built a relationship, but then it felt like they weren't available after that. I don't know if they moved on to the next couple. I don't know what it was, but I know that when we then did premarital mentoring, we tried to keep in contact with couples. I'm still in contact with some of them, which
cool.
I think is awesome. It is really cool to see them
develop as a couple.
Exactly. And have kids. And celebrate, those different things in their lives. So I think that would be what I wish had been different, because I think all of us need mentors or couples that are ahead of us.
Yeah. So
I think that would have been helpful. You've got nothing to add.
Yeah, like I said, it's been over 20 years.
Yes.
The memories are foggy.
If you're listening, we have this personal joke that for a while, if Ted can't remember when something was, he's like, well, it was at least 5 years ago. But you can't say that anymore because it's been a lot longer.
It's been a lot
that
longer.
we have been together. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Well, after this break, we'll discuss 4 truths about marriage that every couple needs to be reminded of from time to time.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Today, we're talking about 4 truths that I think all of us who are married need to remember, especially if we're going through maybe a more challenging season. So, you ready for the first one?
I am. Let's do it.
Okay. When marriage gets hard, it's normal to wonder if you've made a mistake, but it doesn't mean you have.
Right. Right. That's good. I know that sometimes, people get divorced, right?
Yeah.
I know at least one person who thought they had married the wrong person. But by then it's a little too late to say I married the wrong person.
Exactly.
Because you're married.
Right. And I have a quote later that kind of ties into what you're saying there. So when I was writing this article, one of our friends who now has been married around 17 years shared with me that the first 6 months of marriage were rough for her and her husband. And she said, and I'm quoting, "We clashed over so many things. I know both of us had moments where we wondered if we'd made a mistake. Thankfully, neither of us feared the other would walk out. We knew we both took our vows seriously." And she continued and said, "I've since told many other newly married friends to not be shocked or surprised if those first few months are far more difficult than anticipated. Doesn't mean you made a mistake or that you can't or won't have a harmonious marriage." I don't think I said that right. "Two becoming one is simply not a clean or easy process." And I think I read that and, she's specifically talking about, that first year. But I think that once you add kids to the mix, you can hit a hard season. I think it was hard for us when we first became parents because it changed dynamics and schedules.
Right. Well, I lost a job then too.
That's true. That was another stressor.
Another stressor.
And I feel like we've had things throughout our 21 years that have been difficult. And neither of us have gone there in our heads, as far as I know.
No.
But, I don't think it would have been unnormal for us to wonder that when we went through hard seasons.
Sorry, my brain wouldn't even go there.
Yeah.
So,
but what I'm saying is that, those listening, just because you hit a challenging season, whether it's in the first year or the 15th year, doesn't mean you made a mistake.
Right.
So that's kind of the point of that when marriage gets hard, and I'm not including instances of abuse here, it's possible to question, whether you've made a mistake, but that's a feeling. And as Jeremiah 17:9 reminds us, feelings are fickle and covenants are not, and marriage is a covenant.
Absolutely.
So I've actually quoted from Shanti Feldhein's book,
She's like one of our favorites, isn't she?
I think so. The Surprising Secrets of Highly Happy Couples, on multiple episodes recently. So if you haven't read it, get the book. It's a helpful resource if you want to see your marriage go from good to great. And in it, she shares how her research shows that highly happy couples quickly stop a negative train of thought or action, replacing unhappy or angry thoughts or actions with positive ones in order to change their feelings. And she goes on to talk about how we need to herd our emotions. I've never heard
our emotions.
Yeah, kind of like you herd sheep or you
cats.
herd, or cattle, rather than allowing them to lead us. And she says a very important question is, who's the boss, you or your feelings? And she goes on to write, how you answer that simple question has pretty big consequences. As King Solomon put it when describing a negative person in Proverbs, "For as that man thinks in his heart, so he is." And I just thought that was powerful because I think if we let our feelings tell us we made a mistake when marriage is hard and don't stop those thoughts, it can cause a lot of problems.
Right. Sorry, I don't have much to add. I'm very concise. I'm just Mr. Affirmation today.
Yes, you're a man of few words today.
Yes, today.
So, okay, now going back to your idea about, what did you say, like getting married and then deciding, oh, they're not my soulmate? Is that what you said?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's scary stuff.
Yeah. Well, their family therapist, Glenn Lutjens, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'll put a link to the article in the show notes, wrote an article called "Did I Marry the Wrong Person?" And he says, when the two of you walked down the aisle, each of you became the right person for each other.
There you go.
Yes, you may look back and second guess your reasons, but you entered an arena in which learning to truly love someone takes a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, like if the relationship's not sort of developing the way you thought, or if there's bickering, or you can work through those things and your relationship may look different from somebody else's, but yeah, once you're married, you got to stick with it and see where the relationship goes.
Right. It's time to dig in your heels and seek counseling if you need to, and cling tightly to that commitment, unless, again, there's an issue of abuse or something like that. But we tend to deal with just marriages that are good but could be better when we're offering suggestions on the podcast. So, all right. Number 2.
Number 2.
Conflict is useful, but learning how to do it well takes practice.
Now, that's an interesting phrase. Conflict is useful. But I could see how conflict brings up something that could be a discussion. Discussions are good.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I mean, when we got married, I didn't know how to navigate conflict in a healthy way. And I talk about that in the book Team Us. But over the years, I think we've come to learn that conflict can be useful to our relationship if it's navigated well.
Right. I mean, if you discuss, the source of the conflict, we can see where I can better understand you. You can better understand me. Our different views, different opinions. And it's always helpful.
Right. Might be messy in the process.
Oh, yeah. Just like cleaning your house it tends to get more of a disaster before it gets better. Everything's laid out on the floor and boxes are unpacked.
Right. And you're like, wow, why did I start this? I wish I could quit.
Right.
But you don't want to keep a messy house. So you don't quit. You keep cleaning. Yeah. And a friend of ours, Suzanne Hadley Goslin, wrote an article called Want a Great Marriage Someday? Learn to handle conflict now. And so she was really encouraging singles to learn how to handle conflict. But I think a lot of us maybe don't even realize we don't know how to handle conflict before we get married. At least I didn't. I mean, I didn't realize I didn't know how to handle conflict.
Yeah, I think everybody can do better learning how to work through conflict.
Right.
Well,
and she writes in the article, strong relationships occur when each person is looking to Christ and also has the other person's best interest. This shows itself in arguments seasoned with humility, kindness, and love.
Seeking to understand.
Right. And just because we have those tools and we know we should use them doesn't mean that it doesn't still take practice.
And work.
Yeah.
Energy. You can't be lazy when you're trying to resolve a conflict. Laziness is not going to serve you well.
Right. No, it won't. And I think one reason learning to do conflict well takes time is because I was thinking about this. Most of us don't know, like when we got married, you didn't know my triggers. I didn't know your triggers, things that trigger conflict.
Right.
So we've had to learn those over time.
Right.
And Deborah Valletta, is that how it's said?
Valletta.
Thank you. As you can tell, it's a good thing that when I married Ted, his last name was Slater because it's easy to pronounce.
It's actually pronounced Slater.
Oh, well, I've been saying it wrong all these years then. Pronunciation, not my gift. Anyway, in her book, Reset defines triggers as sore spots and explains a trigger is any word, action, thought, interaction, or experience that elicits or provokes an overwhelming negative emotional response. They're things that set us off. Something someone says can be a trigger. It could be something you see or hear or taste or touch or read or feel. And I've found because, we have different backgrounds, or we're raised differently, we've discovered we have different triggers over the years too. And I think it's taken time for us both to realize our triggers by kind of noticing patterns. I think we talked about this on another episode, but sometimes you'll ask me a question and I will respond kind of defensively or explaining, and you don't mean anything by the question. It's usually a question about something that needs to be done at the house.
Right.
And I will take it as I'm failing, I'm not enough, I'm not doing a good enough job, I'm not doing my responsibilities. And you don't mean it that way, but it's triggering something in me that just doesn't feel like I'm enough unless I'm achieving and accomplishing. And so I'm trying to kind of stop and pause and rewire that in my brain. I mean, I'm an oldest daughter. There tends to be this thing with oldest girls who, achievement, not feeling like enough. So,
Interesting.
But I think that, navigating conflict takes time because you've got to kind of discover those things and realize they're a pattern, both about your spouse and about yourself.
Yes. I'm sorry. I wish I were more talkative, but you're covering the bases really well. So
okay, well, we'll wrap this one up.
Okay.
When it comes to navigating conflict well, the goal isn't perfection by a particular wedding anniversary. So, when we celebrate our 22nd anniversary at the end of this year, we're not going to be perfect on how we handle conflict.
Getting better.
Right. So the goal is to remain committed to continually growing better at handling conflict in a God-honoring and other-honoring way. All right. After a short break, we'll talk about 2 more truths that I think every couple needs to remember.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
All right. So we've talked about 1 and 2, right? First one is just because you feel like you made a mistake doesn't mean you did. Second one is conflict can be useful, but it takes time to learn to navigate it well.
Right.
The third one is your spouse will change, but sometimes that change is unpredictable. So,
Do we have any examples between us?
yeah, I'll get there.
Okay.
We'll see if you think you might
All right.
not think it is, but in my perspective.
Okay.
But, we aren't the same people we were when we got married. We still have the same foundational beliefs and the same overall personalities, but we've also grown and changed in the last 21 years. And so I think in many ways we've grown together and change has strengthened our relationship. For example, I love food. But growing up, I ate at primarily like chain restaurants.
Sure.
Like Red Lobster is a favorite. I still like to go there now and then.
Yeah.
There's cheddar rolls and all that.
Good
But
stuff.
you've helped me to come to appreciate local restaurants and dive so much that when we go places, that's what I look for.
Right.
That's where I want to go. And I didn't think I liked Indian or Thai food when we got married. And now they're 2 of my favorites.
Or Spam.
Yeah, I like Spam in certain contexts.
Okay. In certain contexts.
It depends. Yeah. I don't think I actually ever ate any while I was in Hawaii, but it still is a big thing there.
Oh, it still is. It'll continue being a big thing.
Right. Anyway. But in other ways, I think that some changes sometimes puts a strain on our interactions.
I'm interested in seeing where you take this.
All right.
Okay.
So, I think early in our marriage, I thought that as long as we were intentional to grow together, we could keep all change predictable. But I don't think that's true.
Okay.
Like when it comes to our marriage, I think about like news and politics. You've always loved news and politics, but I didn't realize how much you did when we got married. And I think with the type of work that you do, that has only grown because you kind of live in that world with what you work on.
It's true. And it's important for me I feel like it's important for me to be up to date on stuff.
Right. So you have grown continually in your interest and knowledge in that area, maybe even more so than when we got married. And for me, it stresses me out. Like more and more as the years go by, news and politics, whether it's, domestically or internationally, it makes me feel weary. And so I don't like to talk about it very much because it also makes me feel fearful. And I think sometimes that puts a strain on our relationship because you want to talk about topics or current events. And I'm like, I just can't.
Right. I have seen that. And so, I might turn off the radio when you're walking over. I'm like, you don't need to hear this story.
Which I appreciate. But I feel like in some sense, because emotionally I don't feel like I can handle that stuff.
Right.
It keeps me from taking an interest in something that you're very interested in, which in some respects makes me sad, but I don't know how to change that about myself.
Interesting. Okay. That's interesting insight.
Yeah. All right. So how can we navigate the challenge of unpredictable change? I think we just have to be patient and determined and keep doing course corrections. And I think it's okay, even though it does make my heart kind of sad that I'm not able to share in the way you probably would like me to. There are lots of other areas that we have grown in the same direction.
That's good. I have to think about that. I don't think you'd really verbalized that so clearly before. That's interesting.
Yeah. And you like musicals more because of me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not afraid to say that. I love me some musicals.
Yep. And sometimes you're the one quoting the musical theater quotes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, number 4. You need to leave and cleave, but it's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have friends who got married not that long after us. And when I was writing this article, she kind of spoke on this issue. She told me that she wishes their marriage mentors had talked to them more about in-law relationships. She said, we were young and our parents were local, and we found ourselves at times trying to seek the approval of our parents. She explains it was easy to dismiss each other's advice or opinion in lieu of what our parents had to say about a particular matter. We had to learn to set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is an ongoing thing in marriage too, because as dynamics change, as you have kids or where you live, you can think you're doing a good job at like leaving and cleaving, but as dynamics change, I think you can realize maybe blind spots, you know? Silence.
Few words.
Yeah, I think it's one thing, you know, I wrote another article for Boundless at one point talking about how you needed to, when you got married, you needed to move your spouse to your immediate family, you know, because you don't have to have a family. You don't have to have kids to be a family. Once you get married, you're a family, which means that you have to move, you know, now extended family to a place of priority after your spouse.
Right. This is one that I didn't naturally get right. Like when we were first married, I was still, you know, a big part of me was deferring to my parents. Even though I was older, I was in my 30s, but I was still taking their feelings or their thoughts strongly into, into consideration, even sometimes more than yours.
Mm-hmm. We had some conversations. Yeah, I think it's played out differently for you and I. Like that was what you kind of had to wrestle with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I have had to wrestle with, if there has been conflict with you and someone on my side of the family, learning to always choose you. You know, and I think everybody will have that kind of conflict at some point. I think it's something we're continually figuring out.
Absolutely.
So I think while prioritizing your marriage over parents and siblings is important, it's okay if it takes some time. But I will say to those listening, if you've been married 5, 10, or 20 years in and you still haven't done that, I'm not saying you've done it and you're not still facing challenges, but you haven't done it at all, then I think it's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right, it's pretty clear. Scripture challenges us to, leave your family and cling to your spouse.
Right. And I think if it's something that those listening with are struggling with, start small. Start small. I don't know what that looks like. It could be holidays. It could be, I don't know. Start small though, and then build from there. All right, so to recap, here are 4 truths every couple needs to remember, no matter how long you've been married. Number 1 is when marriage gets hard, it's normal to wonder if you've made a mistake, but it doesn't mean you have. Your soulmate is not out there. You are married to your soulmate. Number 2, conflict is useful, but learning how to do it well takes practice. So don't give up. Might get messy. Keep going. Keep working at it. 3, your spouse will change, but sometimes that change is unpredictable. So be adaptable. And 4, you need to leave and cleave, but it's easier said than done. So after this break, we'll be back with this week's Us Time Challenge.
At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than money. It's a way to support the people, causes, and community you love. Because helping you put your faith into action is at the heart of what we do. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
All right, for this week's Us Time Challenge, I think listeners should talk about which of these truths they need to remember most this week. And then ask themselves, how can we live it out in our marriage this week? And it might create some interesting conversations, but I think that could be helpful. What do you think, Ted?
Yeah, I need to think about them. A couple of them are not even a thing anymore. I wonder if I've made a mistake. Leaving and cleaving, maybe a little bit still lingering. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, because we have listeners who've been married a little bit, listeners who've been married longer, I left number 1 in there about the mistake because as we talked about, I don't know how many episodes ago, I think it was why staying a team takes time. We talked about how a lot of people are reaching this age in their marriages, you know, people in their 30s and 40s, and they're getting divorced. And I can't help but wonder if some of them are going, I'm not happy right now, so did I make a mistake?
Right.
You know, so
the concept of a soulmate is so, you know, just kind of accepted, you know, that my soulmate is out there. And if I'm not happy, then obviously I haven't married my soulmate. So
yeah,
my soulmate's still out there.
Yeah.
Which is a lie.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on the Team Us podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, and we'd love to have you leave a review at Apple Podcasts. We're looking forward to next time as we keep talking about how grace, commitment, and cooperation can help couples live the everyday moments of marriage together.
Team Us with Ted and Ashley Slater is a production of Life Audio and Salem Media. If you liked what you heard today, please take a second to rate and review the podcast in your favorite podcast app so that more listeners like you can find the show. For more faith-filled, inspirational podcasts, visit us at lifeaudio.com.
Hi, I'm Zach.
And I'm Randy.
And we're from Salty Saints Podcast. We're a theology and apologetics podcast.
To find out more, subscribe at lifeaudio.com.